Resume our class in CVN. Now, you take this down as your assignment. No, we are now. I think we are now in assignment number 7. So this one will be your assignment number 7. I'd like you to write an essay on this topic. The topic is the values that I consider very important. No, the values that I consider very important. So when I say when we say, or when you want to discuss the values that you consider very important, you have to give me 5 of those values and explain why each value, meaning the 5 values that you mentioned, each value is important to you as a person. No, so that is assignment number 7. You write an essay on this topic. I repeat, the topic would be the values that I consider very important. So I say very important. They occupy the topmost echelon in the hierarchy of values. No, they are the top among your values that you hold dear or important to you. So name 5 of them, then discuss why are they very important to you as a person. Okay, then assignment number 8 would be you write another essay. Write another essay on this topic. No? The role of social media in shaping my values. No? So that's assignment number 8. The role of social media in shaping my values. You know very well that social media is very pervasive nowadays. They influence a lot of your group, no, the youth. And I'd like you to make your statement or your point. How is social media shaping your values? No, is it shaping it for the good or what? No, depends on you. So you have to discuss that now. When you make your assignments, I'd like this as your guide. No, you may, but this time you cannot do it through Cornell notes because I said it's an essay in essay form. So you cannot do this through the Cornell notes because essay form would be da 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 da, no, tuloy-tuloy. Now, when you make your assignment, it has to be in your own penmanship, in your own handwriting, and there should be no erasures at all. Because when I see any erasure there, that would be I subtract some points, no, that I will be giving. So when you make your essay, it has to be very clean. It has to be not less than 3 paragraphs, and it has to be in your own penmanship. No, the rule is when you write an essay, it has to be at least 3 paragraphs. Okay, do I make myself clear? At least 3 paragraphs for me to be able to understand what you are talking about. Because if there is only 1 paragraph or 2 paragraphs, how is that? No, you may not be able to explain it clearly, succinctly, and in a straightforward way. So I'd like you to develop your writing skills. And when I say develop your writing skills, it has to be correct grammar, correct grammar, correct grammar. Okay? That's why we are studying grammar in this course. No? So I'd like to proceed with chapter 4A, which will still be on the discussion of verbs in your book. No, verbs. Now, when we talk of verbs, I said before, we are talking about physical action or mental action. No? And these two classifications will of course fall under what we call the dynamic verbs, no? Which is one type of verb. So dynamic verbs will pertain to physical action or mental action. Well, examples of physical action, you have to run, no, you have to cook, you have to read. There is a bodily movement. Whereas mental action would pertain to what? Remember, to recall, to memorize. These are mental, etc., etc. So these two types would fall under what we call dynamic verbs, which is the first of this type. I think I have discussed this before, so it's just a review. So that is the first type of the verb that we'll be taking up. One is the dynamic verb. Second would be what? What's the second? Stative verb or stative verbs. No, stative verbs, it pertains to states of being. No, states of being. And when we talk of this, usually it talks about facts. No, it talks about measurements. It talks about relationships. It talks about emotions. What else? It talks about feelings. No? So in short, they are all states of being. Kung ano, no? Ano ang factual, kung ano yung nakikita, no? Okay? So example of these stative verbs would be very important that you have to memorize would be these stative verbs that I will be mentioning to you. Of course, the first would be to be, then to have, and then the third would be to seem. Now, I'd like you to know how these verbs are being conjugated. No? When we talk of conjugation, we talk about, what do we talk about? We talk about the tense, about the number, about the mood, about the voice, etc., etc. So, later on, we'll be doing some conjugations of the verbs that I've given you. So, the third type that you will be studying, or I will be teaching you, would be what we call what? Helping verbs. What is the other term for helping verbs? Helping or auxiliary verbs. Now, you might be asking, how come that our course is CVN and yet grammar is being taught to us, no, in college? Well, obviously, you know the answer. I will not tell you the answer, but obviously, you know the answer already. English grammar is very, very important in life, especially if you will be going to work already in an office or even in a career in the academy. English grammar is very important. You cannot do away with the rules or the conventions on grammar. So we have here the third type, which is helping or auxiliary verbs. So I do not want to see this statement, I enjoying the show, which is Baruch. What is lacking here? I enjoying the show, or I cooking the meal, no? I cooking the. So what is lacking here? So this one is actually what do we call these verbs? Well, ending in ing. So what's those? What do we call those? The present participle. No, the present. You will be taking this up later on. But what I am telling you is that I do not want to see this kind of statement because, or these statements rather, because they are grammatically incorrect. So what is lacking here? What is lacking is what we call your helping verb. And what is the appropriate helping verb there that we have to put? If you say your personal pronoun is I, of course, you put I am enjoying the show. I am cooking the meal. No? Or the viand. For instance, I am enjoying the show. So this am, where did we get the word am? Where? Do you know where it came from? It's a helping verb coming from the verb what? The verb to be. No, so that's why I always tell you the be verb is one of the most important verbs in the universe, because you always use this as a helping verb and even a linking verb. You could also use that as a linking verb. We'll be discussing more on this later. So the fourth type would be what we call, well, I mentioned already, linking verb. No? Linking verbs. And what do they link? They link usually what? Nouns or adjectives. No? Nouns or, remember that when we say linking verbs, they are actually connecting words or connecting verbs. They connect. What do they connect? Here, nouns, adjectives. Okay? For now, I'd like you to remember that. And then next would be what we call conditional verbs relating to conditions, no? Conditional verbs. And usually, what are these? They are what we call, you use modals. No? Modals. Like, it doesn't change. When we say modals, they do not change at all. Like will, shall, would, should, etc., etc. They are modals. They do not change at all. So these are the 5 types of verbs that you will be learning under me in grammar. So we go to the first one, dynamic verbs. No? So you have to read your book in English grammar. We are now in chapter 4a. So I told you earlier, when we talk of dynamic verbs, there are 2 types, no? Physical action or mental action. Physical action meaning anything that you see uh, relating to action, no? That's why when you were in the elementary grades or in high school, what did your teacher say about verbs? They are action words, no? She usually will tell that verbs are action words, what, etc., etc. But not all verbs are action words. Remember that, no? So the correct definition of verbs would be, verbs are words that are used to connect a word in the predicate, no? To connect a word in the predicate to link that to the subject, no? To the subject. So there are 2 essential requisites in creating or in forming a sentence. So what are those 2 essential components of a sentence in order for it to have a complete thought or complete idea? So what are those? What are the 2 essential components of a sentence? The first is what we call the subject, no? Subject. Then the second would be the predicate. No? When we talk of the subject, usually it is answerable. The question would be what or who. No, it is the person, thing, or it is the person, thing, event, the baptize. Again, we go back to that baptize. No, baptize are nouns. No, persons, animals, places, things, ideas, events, situations. No, these are, any of these can be the subject. It is talking about, the subject would be pertaining to any of this, and it is what the sentence is all about. Sentence is all about. It is what the sentence is all about. predicate, of course, when we talk of the predicate, we are talking of describing further what the subject does, or what the subject is performing, or what the subject is all about. No, it talks more, it gives more information about the subject. So do not forget, every sentence or every statement contains a subject and also a predicate. Now, we are still in dynamic verbs, no? But we have to relate this to the two essential components of a sentence. Now, so for instance, if your verb is write, for instance, or to write, no? To write. No, this is a physical action. It's a dynamic verb, no? Or perhaps your verb would be to memorize. It's a mental action. It doesn't require any body movement, no? So to memorize. So this one is a physical action. This one is a mental action. Now let us use them in a sentence. He writes nice essays. Now, going back to my first discussion about subject and predicate, which one here, because I told you, each word in a sentence would correspond to a what we call a part of speech. No, remember your part of speech, which is NP Baapsi, by way of review. So bawat isa, any of this, bawat isa will fall under any of this NP Baapsi. What is he? It's a pronoun. No, it's a personal pronoun. What is right? It's a verb. What is nice? It's an adjective. Then essays would be a noun. So when you write or when you create your sentences, of course, you think of the part of speech, but that is not all that you should think about. You should also think of the grammar rules so that it doesn't become a Carabao English anymore. No? So remember all the grammar rules. So let us dissect this so that you will know what is the subject and what is the predicate in this statement. Writes is a dynamic verb, no? It's a physical action. So what do you think is the subject and what do you think would be the predicate? No? The subject would be this, he, the pronoun. I told you, when we talk of the pronoun, they are used as substitutes for nouns, no? Substitutes for nouns. He would represent not only he, it might represent Jose Rizal, no? It might represent, say for instance, Jerry, might represent Manuel, it might represent Domingo, for instance, no? So he, hindi lang siya he, no? Because if you want to create your sentences, you do not want to repeat all over again your subject. Say, he writes nice essays. So, he would pertain perhaps to Jose Rizal, Jerry, any masculine noun. So, so that you will not be repeating all throughout your essay about your subject. Say, for instance, Jose Rizal writes nice essays. So, if you do not want to repeat Jose Rizal all over again, you just say he. No, he writes nice essays. Okay? So he will be your subject, and predicate, your predicate would be writes nice essays. It talks about something more about your subject, he. No? So how do we determine that the succeeding words will form their predicate? Well, of course, your reference point would be the verb. No, doon magsisimula yung predicate mo. So you should always remember that once you determine what your sub or what your verb is in your sentence, that will be the start of your predicate. No? Okay. Let's take another example. You to remember, no? To remember. Say for instance, Maria Santos or okay, Maria Santos remembers her high school days. So which one is your subject and which one is your predicate? Your subject will of course be Maria Santos because it talks about this sentence talks about Maria Santos. It tells something about Maria Santos, no? And then your predicate would be this. Remember that your verb will be the starting point of your predicate. Remember that the reference point of your predicate would start from your verb. No? So Maria Santos would be your subject, and then remembers her high school days would be your predicate. Now, dynamic verbs. I think it is quite long already. At least I have discussed to you what are dynamic verbs. So next time we proceed with helping or auxiliary verbs. So I'd like you to do in your grammar book exercise 4A1. No? So you should do exercise 4A1. But when you do exercise 4A1, I do not want any erasures. Because if I see some erasures again, I will mark that as wrong. Okay, thank you and good afternoon, everyone.